Hello, man. It has been forever since I have done a live stream, and I am so sorry about that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if your spring so far has been as crazy as mine, but wow. I mean, the weather has been all over the place from the mid 70s down to, I don't think it hit the teens, but it was definitely in the low 20s. So you can't decide if you're going to plant the lilac bushes that you bought or leave them inside, and hopefully they won't wilt. Anyhow, like I said, I'm so glad that you're here. I am drinking a peppermint tea this time. Not a big surprise, but I did run out of that spearmint tea that I was drinking for a while, and I didn't really feel like having that wild berry zinger like I sometimes do. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about trace measures, which is an interesting topic in social psychology. It is a type of qualitative research. And I know that doesn't seem like that would be something for us to talk about here on Inspirational Influencers, this podcast, but it does actually apply to what we usually talk about. It has interesting pros, um, um, similarities and differences with cognitive dissonance. So let's get started. Yeah. At first, this spring has been pretty. Oh, hi, Dawn. So glad to see you. What are you drinking today? Hopefully, even though it's been several weeks since I have done one of these live streams, I hope that we have several people that are in the chat with us so that it will be fun. If you do join us, would you please join in the chat? Iced tea this time, huh? I don't know if you heard me say, but I have peppermint tea this time. So it's good. Anyway, this springtime has been pretty crazy, and part of the reason why I haven't had a live stream in a little while. Well, for one, my kitty passed away just a couple of weeks ago, and she was the last of the pets that we had when my children were growing up. So that's been quite a thing to adapt to here. And I'm in my third week. Today is the last day of the third week of my fourth statistics class in my doctorate studies. So I'm very excited that I'm almost halfway done with statistics, this particular class, then it'll be finished forever. But how are you? How have you been the last month or so? I would love to hear about it. Please put it in the chat. I'd love it. But I do have some wonderful news. I got some mail on Saturday and I even laminated it. I'm so excited. DocPrattMinistries, as the nonprofit that I have started, that addresses all of the 6 dimensions of health and wellness, as you guys have heard me say, the emotional health and wellness, including identity and spiritual health, and being able to understand your own emotions and how to define them and work through them. And then the mental habits, physical health and wellness, which is pretty obvious. Then vocational, talking about what is your calling, what are your passions, and career choices and how those interact. Then the social wellness, that has to do a lot with communication, relationships, what needs to be trimmed away from your social circle and what needs to be fertilized. Then also at the end of the 6 dimensions, there's financial health and wellness. So that is what DocPrattMinistries addresses. We have monthly game nights and times that we get together to do book clubs. Lots of different things. I would love it. If you would please go to DocPrattMinistries.org, and I'll leave that in the description after we're done with the live stream today. But DocPratt, DocPratt Ministries.org. Let me know what you think of the website. I'd love to get some feedback. Hopefully there's some good information in there that would be helpful for you. There's some curriculum listed, curricula actually, and some opportunities to get involved if you would like to. So that would be great. All right. Well, in these doctorate studies of mine, I have been taking a social psychology class, and this is the research and topics, first one. Hi, Marcia. Good to meet you. see you that you're on here. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. But this is the textbook. This is like a undergraduate biology size textbook. It's crazy. But I was so excited by what I came across that I had a hard time even pulling myself away from finishing the assignment, even though I have other things that I needed to do. So that's what we're talking about today, and that's trace measures. All right. This chapter is actually talking about how do you do research in social psychology. And so that's kind of interesting because you would think social psychology or psychology, anybody who's been in a mall for any period of time, you know those people that try to track you down with their surveys and such. Well, that can be social psychology research also. That tends to be a laboratory type setting where they can control what's being said and the experience that you have. It takes you out of your natural setting to ask you questions. When you fill out those surveys, then they calculate the data and find out what the scores are on the individual questions on the survey. So that is quantitative, and I have been studying qualitative this particular semester. So these are methods for social psychology of doing research outside of the laboratory. So I had a great time with this. They call them basically field studies, anything that is the research that's being done outside of the laboratory. So that includes experiments, strictly defined as something that can show causality, not just correlation, which is interesting. Or non-experimental designs. So that's cool too. Some of the ideas, I'm going to flip through the big textbook today instead of having it laid out up on my screen. But the field experiments, let's see, they want, well, just a moment, get to it. Sorry about that. One interesting thing, of course, you guys have all been on Facebook and have had somebody ask you, hey, do you mind spending some time and answering some questions for me? It would be a great help for my research that I'm doing. Well, that's a really good way to get surveys answered and such. That is not necessarily what we're talking about today, but that is a really good way to gather information and learn something, especially about populations. So we're just going to go ahead and jump through to trace measures rather than going over the other ones. Okay, trace measures means, remember, this is social psychology research method. How am I going to find data that I can learn new things about what it means to be human and to be living within a social context? So some social behaviors, attitudes, cognitions, ways of thinking, and emotions leave physical traces in their wake. As soon as I started reading this, I thought, ooh, I like this stuff. Okay. And you'll understand a little bit more when I get further down why I love this stuff. There was a guy who did Rathje. He did a garbage project, and this was fascinating. So he reasoned that just as archaeologists could use ancient trash or refuse to learn about the behavior of people who lived many millennia ago, he too could use modern day garbage to get insight into contemporary behavior. Now, his study, I thought that was great. Basically, they ended up evaluating at the front door, asking inhabitants or households from their front door to answer questions on a survey, and then they got permission to later go back and evaluate the trash. So what it said, okay, the front door interview data suggested that beer consumption in this neighborhood occurred in only 15% of the homes. and was no higher than 8 cans per week. But when they evaluated the trash, which is called the backdoor garbage analysis, it revealed that beer was consumed in 77% of the homes, not just 15. And with 54% of those exceeded the supposed maximum of 8 cans. So people wanted to answer in particular ways and then were found out to be quite incorrect, whether purposefully misleading or not. So that's pretty interesting. At a very broad level, all trace measures rely on the processes of either erosion or accretion. So that means getting rid of or adding to. Yeah. For example, there was a person named Webb, and the cohorts, they suggested that they could track the popularity of exhibits in museums according to the numbers of nose prints on the glass. And then they could also make estimations about the ages of those folks according to the height. Of course, I wouldn't think that after a certain height there would be so many nose prints, but I thought that was fascinating. So that's an accretion, because the number of nose prints that are added, that's what they were able to find out from it. So building on this, it says, the personal environments that individuals craft around themselves, such as offices and bedrooms, could be rich with information about the occupants. It seems likely, for example, that the pictures a person hangs on her walls, the books she chooses to read, and the way she arranges the items that fill the space around her all reflect aspects of her attitudes, behaviors, values, and self-views. 3 different mechanisms can be delineated by which people can have an impact on the environments around them, and in turn, how the physical impact or environments can serve as an individual's expression. So broadly, people alter their spaces for just 3 reasons. Now, that I want you to listen to this. 3 reasons that people alter their spaces. First, they want to affect how they think and feel. So they want that environment to affect them in the way that they want it to affect them. Secondly, they want to broadcast information about themselves. So if somebody comes in their space, whether it's their office or their kitchen or their home, whatever, they want the people who come in to see that correctly reflect who they want to be portrayed as. And then third, they inadvertently affect the spaces in the course of their everyday behaviors. So that's that residue of behaviors that's left behind. I still remember being, when I was married, I would walk in and I could tell, after being gone for most of the day, I could tell exactly what happened and in what order within maybe 30 seconds of just scanning the environment. I could see breadcrumbs on the counter. Then I would see a knife in the sink, maybe that had some jelly on it. And then I would see a newspaper or a magazine out on the counter. And then I could hear little footprints or footsteps in the other room. So very quickly, I could tell exactly what had happened while I was gone. So that was a lot of fun. Anyway, the thought and feeling regulators. That's what we'll talk about first with this trace measures. Personal environments are the context for a wide range of activities, ranging from relaxing and reminiscing to working and playing. So this was that first point that they were talking about, where you want to set the environment to affect you in the way that you want it to be affecting you. Many items within an environment are there to affect the feelings of the occupant, like they said. The effectiveness with which these activities can be accomplished may be affected by the physical and ambient qualities of the space. It's hard to relax with a lot of noise around, and it's difficult to concentrate when you're surrounded by distractions. So having mementos around can actually purposefully calm your reaction to a stressful stimulus, for example. Elements used to regulate emotions and thoughts could include music on an iPod. This book was written in 2010, just so you know. And keepsakes on the windowsill, or photos of family on the refrigerator. So that's the environment that you build to affect you in the way that you want it to affect you. Secondly, the way that your environment reflects who you are. One of the ways in which people make spaces their own is by adorning them with identity claims, deliberate, symbolic statements about how they would like to be regarded. So again, if somebody comes into your house, how is it that you would want them to see you? Such signals can be split into two broad categories. So these identity claims can be two different types. Attitudes and values made to others about how one would like to be regarded, right? That's very similar to what we were just saying. And then also intended to reinforce their self-views. So to reinforce, for example, displaying a fountain pen awarded in a high school science fair. Hey, look what I did. That's my trophy. That's part of who I am. So it reaffirms what I want to believe about myself. And then thirdly, there is the behavioral residue, like we talked about. Many behaviors leave some kind of discernible residue in their wake. Given that large quantities of behavior occur in personal environments, it's reasonable to suppose that these environments might accumulate a fair amount of residue. So, physical traces in an environment could be like an organized desk. An exterior residue refers to the remnants of past activities and material preparations for activities that will take place elsewhere, like a snowboard. Anyway, this is all very exciting to me. They go on to talk about how you set your environment, how you decorate, all of that. We talked about the psychology of homes back, I believe it was in December, and I should look that back up to see what it was, the articles that we used in that particular live stream. But this was fascinating about how they overlapped. The potential, okay, let me say that psychologists, social psychologists, that's what I'm studying, if they want to collect data about behaviors or phenomena that happen within the human experience, they could ask questions via a survey, like I was talking about before. And as that one person, when they did their study, the front door and the back door discrepancies, we can find that either people are not very self-aware, or they don't want to share particular parts of themselves. They want to make sure to appear to the researcher, even in anonymous studies, by the way, they want to appear to the researcher as a particular way. They don't want to defame themselves in any way, which is pretty fascinating. But if you, as a social psychologist, want to do research and just observe people, then trace measures is a helpful way. There are some different specific physical spaces. And as we said, the auditory, all the different senses, you can tell what has been left behind. So just as people craft their physical spaces, they also select and mold their auditory and social environments. We've talked a lot about social environments here on this particular live stream because we want our natural influence to inspire others and not bring anybody down. We want to make sure to make the world a better place because we were there and we had interacted with a person. So, all right. So, just as people physically dwell in houses and offices, they dwell virtually online as well. What kind of residual effect are you leaving on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social networks? Or how are you sending your emails or mail? If anybody uses snail mail to send off cards or anything like that anymore, what's the residue of you having been there? Something to think about. And they also said, just as people leave traces of their actions, intentions, and values in their permanent spaces, they also leave traces in other places, such as their cars. Does your car represent who you are? I think mine probably does. I don't currently have the time to maintain my car the same way that I can maintain the inside of my home. My home, I do my best, which isn't always 100%, of course, but I maintain my home so that when people come, they're comfortable. I don't necessarily use it to express who I am, other than I'm welcoming. I want to make sure that they feel like they can take their shoes off and just relax while they're here and just be real. They don't have to put up any kind of pretense or anything like that. Well, inside my car, I have a minivan. I love my minivan because it is so functional for the lifestyle that I lead. I am Ama to 5 kids. Grandma, that's what they call me, is Ama. And so there are toddler seats, preschool boosters, even a baby seat is in there. The floor is not terribly clean. I don't let the children eat in there. I can flip the seats down into the floor sometimes and use it as a camping van. I've done that before, putting in a mattress and going across the state and having a good time with that. Anyway, my van, while it's not it's not gross or anything like that, but it does tell you that I use it to death. And it is for transport of people that I love and care about and want to provide a good, safe environment for them to explore life in. The floor mats are not very clean, but that's only because of dirt. So, what does that say about me? I don't know. You guys make your own assumptions. But what does your car look like? What kind of music do you listen to when you are doing work? Or do you listen to music? If somebody comes into your environment, and this is not for you to have any kind of negative self-view, by the way, but if somebody comes into your environment, what is it that they would be able to understand better about you by being there? If your environment is very sterile of personal expression, that kind of says something too. Either maybe you're guarded and you don't want that kind of stuff out, or you just feel like this is a transient stop anyway, and you're going to be moving on. So why bother personalizing it? Just some interesting thoughts. So when I was reading through this, one of the things that they talk about at the beginning is self-verification theory. And I thought, ooh, what is that? So if that has to do with what we were talking about, then I was very interested in digging in further. All right. So let's talk about self-verification theory now and how that compares to the trace measures type of research. Self-verification theory is a concept that explores people's desire to be understood and known by others in ways that align with their self-views. So how you see yourself is how you want to be understood and known. So that makes sense. Your physical environment, that would be a way of self-verifying, as this theory is stating. So the core idea is that people are motivated to maintain consistent self-views, even if those views are negative. You want to prove to people around you how you want to be viewed, because this provides stability and coherence and predictability in your life. So as I was reading through this, I was thinking, wait a minute, this sounds awfully close to cognitive dissonance. So we'll work on that one in just a moment. I did look up how they compare and contrast. We'll find out more. But still about self-verification theory. It was developed by William Swan in 1981. I was a little kid then. The theory builds on earlier ideas about how people form self-views to navigate social interactions effectively. So here we are again, right in the whole world of inspirational influencers. How are we going to rub shoulders with other people? How do we want to be expressing ourselves so that we are perceived in the way that we want to be perceived? And is it going to mesh well, right? All right. So if you have a positive self-view, people with positive self-perception seek both positive evaluations and self-verification and make sure that they align. Okay. People with negative self-perceptions, it conflicts with their self-enhancement, the way that they project themselves. This can lead to undesirable outcomes, such as gravitating toward abusive relationships or undermining therapy progress. Yeah. All right. So the behavioral effects of self-verification theory. People tend to prefer interaction partners who confirm who they see themselves as. Positive self-view individuals favor being around people who support them in positive ways. Like, oh, aren't you great? You're awesome. Oh, don't you look really pretty today? Or I'm super proud of you for the way that you did this, whatever that is. And a person with negative self-view wants to be around unfavorable partners, somebody that will constantly tell them what they've been telling themselves. So self-verification influences various aspects of life, including relationships, workplace dynamics. I would dare say even where you work. Are you working in a place that reflects your actual value? Or are you seeing yourself in such a negative view that you think that this is where you belong when you really actually should be in a different, more challenging spot, or vice versa? So the mechanisms of self-verification, identity cues, like using your physical appearance or your behavior or your possessions to signal your identity. There's social context, like we talked about, trying to get reactions from people. Do you remember that time that I talked about it. I wasn't able to show the screen, but I talked about that woman who dresses like she's from the 1940s. I believe it's every Tuesday, so that she can elicit a response from people around her and break down those barriers of just the same old day. She wants interaction. She wants to combat the loneliness that is so prevalent in the world now. So that's interesting. The self-concept change, if you want to change the way that you feel about yourself. Change can occur in your self-concept if you change the social roles or your life circumstances, which makes sense. If you make changes on purpose to improve what's around you, that helps improve, or whichever way, your own self-concept. Okay, well, that was basically talking about self-verification theory. And that was pretty interesting. And like I said, I thought that was awfully close to cognitive dissonance. So let's find out what the difference is. The core similarity. is that both theories, cognitive dissonance and self-verification, deal with the discomfort caused by inconsistencies. Okay. Cognitive dissonance focuses on the internal conflicts with your beliefs, actions, attitudes, that kind of stuff. But self-verification emphasizes the alignment of your inside with how others perceive. So self-verification deals with the external portion of that. So in other words, the cognitive dissonance is more of a psychology topic, and self-verification is more of a social psychology topic, much like we deal with here on this live stream. So are you guys being represented here in any different directions? And would you like to share anything in the chat about anything that's coming to mind? Does your car represent who you are? Does your home represent who you are? What about your playlist? Those kinds of things. So I have a chart that I'm able to read to you from about cognitive dissonance versus self-verification. So the way to resolve cognitive dissonance, which is the internal struggle, is to change your beliefs or attitudes or rationalize your behavior in some way. But if you wanted to resolve a self-verification difficulty, then you seek feedback from others that confirm what you want, right? So that's pretty cool. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting kind of lost in that subject. Oh my goodness, Marcia, you're awesome. Everything about me shows a work in progress. Yes, but that's because you're diligent. You love taking on projects and working hard on long-term projects, and I'm happy. Uh-oh, Dawn, my car is a mess and so is my home. What does that say? I don't know. What do you think it says? How do you feel about that? What do you have to say? Well, recently, with this reading that I had to do for the social psychology class, I had to write a paper. Of course I did, right? And I remembered that a client reached out to me a couple of years ago, and she wanted to hire me as her life coach to figure out specifically what are to compile a list together of traits and tells to determine if a man would be a good husband for her. She was dating somebody that she had been dating for quite a while, and she wanted to know, all right, well, is this a good catch or not? Should I break off the relationship or should I continue on? Because we're getting to the point that we need to decide if we're going to be serious or not. And as you can see, trace measures and the self-verification theory and the cognitive dissonance, all of that happily applies to this particular question. Maybe you're not looking for a husband right now, but maybe you need to be thinking about business partners or coworkers, or where do you fit in your social context? So her questions are, or were, would he be wise with finances? And would he always be faithful and supportive? What are his thresholds? Like, how far can he handle something? And what are his triggers? And how severely would he react to his triggers? So this was a fascinating study that we worked on together. And it even grew into a curriculum that I had available for anybody else who wanted to answer that or ask those questions of the person that they're in. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Really super cool. But we would be able to, in answer to the question, we would be able to do field experiments that would, like watching how he drives and how he interacts with strangers, his closest friends, people he does not like, his parents, his siblings, his church, and so on. Just even when he wasn't around, what kind of residue did he leave with those people in those places? Or what does he listen to in his music? What does he like to watch for movies or TV or whatever like that? Because there's going to be residue. So you want to have those conversations and see what happens. What's been left behind, because that would be a huge tell about a person. So having gathered the data from all those experiments that I was suggesting, the most telling data regarding him as a potential husband would be to see his office and his home, both when he knows you're coming and when he doesn't know you're coming. His possessions and their placement, prominence, where are they? How easily are they seen? And his tidiness would say a lot about what he's like to live with. What does he value? So outfitted with the results, she'd be able to make a reliable assumption as to if she should continue dating him or not. Now, here's the thought. Just like we always boil it down to every time I have a live stream podcast, what residue are you leaving behind? My dad had said many years before he passed away, and by the way, today is the 4th anniversary of his passing. So that has been hanging out with me all day. He said that he wanted people to know God because he had been here. He always wanted people to feel heard and seen and cared for. He was a kind man, loved education, loved teaching, and loved having fun, especially going to Ohio State football games down there in the horseshoe. So his residue was positive. He brought people up from their position. What do you do? What residue do you leave? Does it need to be tweaked in any particular way? Is it expressing who you actually are? Who God sees you as? Who your favorite, or the people who see you as their favorite? Does it represent your best qualities? The residue that you leave behind. So I thought that was pretty fascinating stuff and good for us to think about here in our podcast. Do you have people that you need to be evaluating, or your environment? Do you need to evaluate that? I mean, let's just go ahead and start with the 6 dimensions, right? Your emotions. How are they doing? Do you need to spend some time and think about what's going on, what you're feeling, and the way that your body exhibits those feelings so that you can handle them? What about your mental habits? Are you getting your act together 1% at a time, or 1% at a time? This is the current book study that we're doing, Atomic Habits. You guys have heard me reference this book a lot by James Clear, but he has 4 laws to follow. If you want to make changes in your life, it's not about the level of motivation that you have or the strength that you have, the stick-to-itiveness, all of that. It's about changing your environment. I think we're on a theme tonight. Changing your environment so that it will do what you want it to do in your life to make that 1% change in a positive direction toward your goals. The first law is to make it obvious. Whatever it is that you want to change, whatever habit that you want to instill into your life, whatever it is, the improvement or maybe pulling away, that's a possibility. You want to make it obvious. Make something in your environment, in whichever way, obvious about this. So it's a constant reminder. For me, if something is out of sight, it's definitely out of mind. I have a hard time remembering to do things if I don't have like a Post-it or my calendar, it needs to be written in there. My to-do list is right next to my appointments, and I need to keep all that stuff out all the time. So make it obvious. The second thing is to make it attractive. Make sure that it's attractive. Make your habit irresistible is what he says. Let's just go ahead and hold of that page and read it real quickly. Oh, this was super cool. I didn't know this about this particular type of bird, and it's kind of sad the way that they did the research, but that's the way research in the 40s was. There was a Dutch scientist named Tinbergen, and he had done a series of experiments about motivation. Adult herring gulls, so that's a kind of bird, a gull, have a small red dot on their beak. And the researcher noticed that the newly hatched chicks would peck this spot whenever they wanted food. So what he did, he was like, I wonder, came up with his research question, wondering if it was the red dot or if it was because it was mama or dad. I guess both parents have that red dot. So what he did was, when the parents flew away, he went over to the nest and offered these chicks a dummy beak that had a red dot on them, but they were obvious fakes. But the tiny baby gulls, they just saw the red spot and they just pecked away at it as if it were attached to their own mother. Then he did more. He made the red spot bigger. And wouldn't you know that the baby birds went crazy with pecking at it. They were even more delighted, like it was a lot of stimulus. So that's the idea. Make it obvious, make it attractive. What is it that you want to do in your life as that atomic habit, whichever? How are you going to make it obvious and attractive so that you can't stand not doing it? All right. So then the third law is make it easy. Don't put okay. If you're going to go out for a run every morning, make sure you put your shoes in the same spot, either by the front door or by your bed, whichever one of those is best. You don't want to have to go searching for your running shoes if you want to have the habit added in your life of going on a run. Because if you're wandering around looking for your shoes, you're going to get distracted by other things in your environment. And you're going to think after a while, forget that. I'm not going for a run. I'm going to sit. I'm going to drink my coffee. I'm going to enjoy my morning. Maybe you'll even get on your work day and you will have missed your run. So make it easy. Make it easy. Then the fourth law of these atomic habits is to make it satisfying. That's very important. The cardinal rule of behavior change. I will read that because the entire book is very good. All right. Consistency. Oh, okay. So this particular person, I'm not going to read the many paragraphs that led up to this, but it was a company that was making, actually, Luby is this person's name, and his team partnered with Procter & Gamble to supply a whole neighborhood with Safeguard soap. Okay. Compared to the standard bar of soap, using Safeguard was a more enjoyable experience. Like, why? Why? What made it so attractive or satisfying? The soap foamed easily and people were able to lather their hands with suds. It smelled great. Instantly, hand washing became slightly more pleasurable. Within months, the researchers saw a rapid shift in the health of children in the neighborhood. The rate of diarrhea fell by 52%, pneumonia by 48%, and impetigo, a bacterial skin infection, by 35%. So they had a social environmental problem that they fixed by just offering some really great soap. Isn't that funny? What kind of things could you add into your life that would be helpful for your goals? Make it satisfying. Make it smell good. Texture and all that wonderful stuff. So, pleasure teaches your brain that a behavior is worth remembering and repeating. That is super cool. We, as humans, are creatures of habit. Our brains are always looking for the easiest way to accomplish a particular topic or project, whatever it is that's ahead, and wants to take or use the least amount of energy to do those things. So the more automatic you can make something, the better it is. So how can you leave good residue from your behaviors, from your natural influence, everywhere you go? How can you make the world a better place? So if you get the chance, please do go to DocPrattMinistries.org. Really, 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 I would love for you to know what's going on. I'm super excited about this. This is actually a very monumental time in my life. Just yesterday, I got this mail saying that it was confirmed and approved as a 501c3. So now I'm able to move forward in many of the things that I wanted to do to make sure that whatever influence I have is able to get larger and more impactful and in a positive way. I want to empower others to do and be the best that they possibly can. I hope you are too. Well, we're going to cut it short a little bit today. Thank you very, very, very much for joining. Really appreciate you. And thank you for those who were in the chat. That was great to be able to interact with you today. I hope you have a wonderful week. Remember, you are important. You do have influence. You are a leader because you have influence. And make sure that you do the very best you can to empower others around you. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you next Sunday.